A very good morning to you. Welcome to the Morning Brief right here on Channels Television. I'm Jeffrey Ozong. As a weekend edition of the program where we try to look at and project into the weekend because political activities, economic activities, social activities, they never come to an end. They never go to sleep. And we try to look back into the beginning of the week until now to see what are the big highlights as far as the happenings in the politics is concerned. But I hope you had a fantastic week. And a great weekend ahead is what we wish you from here. Kyle is going to join me in just a moment. But one of the things we like to do on a morning like this is try to binge through a lot of the things that are happening in the polity to bring you what we consider what is most important for you that will be of interest to you as far as this is concerned. And I know that if it was a show where we open the phone lines to say, okay, we have a phone line, let's have you come in to have your say. There's a lot Nigerians will be talking about. Some will be talking about the concerns about the economy, how it's biting hard, how the government is insensitive and all of that. Well, the supporters of the government will say, well, this is a necessary pain for you to be able to have great time tomorrow. So the back and forth over what the policies of government is doing to the economy looks like we will never ever agree until we see tangible results, because the macroeconomic data, as far as we've seen, some are looking in the right direction. The reserve, for instance, without encumbrances in gross is about $40 billion. If you take out the encumbrances, it's way less than that. The naira is quite high in terms of its exchange with the dollar, but it's stable. Those are the pointers. But the interest rate is high. Inflation may have been tapering successively in the last few months, but it's really biting hard. It's still on the high side. So as far as the economy is concerned, the compounding effect, if you will, or trickling down to the very common man on the street who is saying, look, before President Bola Tinubu came into office, I used to do this for this amount, I used to buy this for that amount, whether it's goods or services that are being provided. But since this president came in, it's been hell on earth. And that argument is valid because, yes, you're very correct. If you're buying something for 1 naira, now you're buying it for 70 naira. It's crazy. But the government is saying, oh, we may have been living on subsidies. So taking out subsidies is going to give you that effect, but it will come back later. How long this pain will last is another kettle of fish. I don't think anybody will be able to answer. In fact, if any economist who knows what he's doing will give you an answer, will not really give you a specific answer. The closest they may give you is maybe another 15, 20 years from now. Now, Nigerians don't like to hear that. So what can be done to mitigate the gaps as far as this is concerned? The argument is right there on social media. The argument is right there where you are and all of that. One of the challenges we found with the African economy is the fact that it looks like the policies have their mind of their own, and then the reality have a mind of its own. That meeting point is always where we have a problem. There could be growth, GDP growth, the macroeconomic data looking good, but how you and I, the food we eat, the transportation system, because the legacy issues have not been dealt with. We're trying to deal with the power issues. It has not been solved. There's progress being made. We're trying to deal with the transportation infrastructure, road infrastructure. There is nothing as a country we have gotten right yet. That doesn't mean we can't get it right tomorrow. But as far as this is concerned, right now, there's nothing, I can't mention one thing that we have gotten perfectly right that concerns all of us. I know there are some sectors that are doing better than the others. But what I'm talking about the state of infrastructure, the state of our technology. Some young men are doing quite exceptional things. The state of, let's say, power, for instance. So I can go on and on with the list. So the debate over the quality of lives of Nigerians in vis-a-vis the policies across the different administrations till now is always a different kettle of fish. And sometimes the argument I put to them, every government has always come to say, we will make your life better. But have they? So what do we now do when we have a situation like this? Well, Kayode, my colleague, is in Abuja studios. Kayode, I came up with a lot of posers this morning, and I don't know whether I have any answers to some of the posers I've raised today. How is Abuja, by the way?
Naturally, I should have some sort of insight, since I'm just a few kilometers away. from the State House. But, well, President Bola Tinubu has since commenced a working vacation as part of his 2025 annual leave. He departed Nigeria yesterday. So for this period, do not be surprised that you'll be hearing a lot from the president, even though it is called a working vacation. In case you were thinking the president will maybe visit Gashaka or Gembu in Taraba State, spend some time there, or maybe somewhere close to the Erinjesha waterfalls or Ikogosi Spring, or even the Oguta Lake in Imo State. In case you thought that was what the president was planning, well, no, he's going to be spending that time in Europe, in France and the UK, we understand. So the president for now is on that working vacation on leave, Jeffrey. But you have pretty much captured those issues that Nigerians speak about, that they experience, that they expect something to change regarding every blessed day, every waking moment. These are the things that stare Nigerians in the face. These are the questions that they sometimes ask, most times just take all of it in. But clearly they want things to change for the better. The economy is stabilizing. Yes, they say it's better than it's tanking even further, but some have said we're at the bottom already, so the only place it can go is up. But how fast would we get to that summit, or at least get close to it, is a big question. And those are the challenges or posers that we'll be putting up on the show this morning. But I can tell you for sure that President Bola Tinubu has commenced his working vacation, Jeffrey, and he'll be spending that time in Europe.
Oh, well, I call you my my Tinubu trip tracker. I wanted you to give us the numbers because you're familiar with the number. I chose not to be counting because it looks like every president has this thing about always going abroad, you know, traveling. So the president's preferred destination from our reading is to the effect that he likes to go to France a lot. I think he has some personal relationships with France. I know his old-time buddy, Chagri, also lives in France, and maybe he goes for medicals there, and maybe touch down on London. I do not know. But of course, the president likes his destination to be France whenever he's traveling for. In fact, sometimes he goes for official trips and then detour to France to, you know, do whatever it is, take a break, maybe do medicals. I do not know. You know, with Nigeria, we never hear about our president's medicals as though it's not a human being. And I don't wonder. But Kade, when it comes to this trip, you see this video we're showing now, this is one of the things I don't understand. Why will, whenever the president is traveling, governors will leave their states, ministers will leave their work? I can understand the chief of staff and maybe the secretary to the state government. But every other person who is there, for God's sake, why do they always see the need? I mean, this is not peculiar to President Tinubu. I don't know whether I've seen this with other world leaders. Every time the president is traveling or returning, governors will leave their states. Ministers will leave their work. Look at waving. These are men, distinguished men who run states, who run ministries, leave their work, stand by and be waving at the president. Come on, guys, what exactly? I think this, for me, this has to stop. Whether they go there or not, the president will travel. He has all the military paraphernalia at his disposal. He doesn't need people coming to stand by to wish him well for his trip or come back to say, Daddy, oh, yo. It's not, I don't understand why. I still don't get, when I see this picture, I still don't understand it at all, Kaede. Why do they have to leave their states? I know they may come to Abuja, you know, to lobby for a thing or the other, that's okay. But why do we always see the need to always go to the airport and see the president off and come back? It doesn't make any sense to me. I do not know whether it will ever make any sense to me as far as these trips. Standing at the foot of the aircraft to wait for the president when he's traveling or wait for him when he's returning. Kadi, you have the next one.
Well, Jeffrey, that is certainly something that we must speak to time and again and understand the rationale. Yeah, I know that there's different cultures that seep into democracy. So it may be democracy, but it's really your own brand of democracy. It's almost like saying you have the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, the governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, all of them lining up, all the Republican governors, a lot of them lining up just to wave President Donald Trump goodbye for a trip time and again. But while all of that is playing out, let's tell you that the police in Kaduna State has sent some sort of invite to the former governor of the state, Mr. Nasir El-Rufai, and other ADC leaders in Kaduna State. Why? Well, it's over alleged criminal conspiracy, incitement of public disturbance, mischief, and causing grievous hurts. He and the other leaders in the ADC were summoned by the commissioner or the deputy commissioner of police in charge of criminal investigations, Zubairu Abdullahi. And this is not far-fetched. They say first that he must appear, or they must appear, before or on September the 8th. Well, they can choose to appear before, but I imagine on September the 8th is when they must appear. And this, of course, has to do with that meeting that they held, the inauguration that they held. The ADC members said they've not been served in that sense. They only read about it on social media. But this is being viewed from different lenses. Some think this is a clampdown on opposition. Others say, is the police just doing their jobs? Can we just allow them to do their jobs for once without imputing any sort of political motive in it? But Jeffrey, this is definitely going to be a major one. And a lot of people expect that the former governor, being a law-abiding citizen, as is said time and again, would honor that invite by the police. Your thoughts, Jeffrey?
It's a very, I don't know how to look at it, because on one hand, the police has to do their work. From what I read, I understand that they were invited by the police because there were complaints. But I know that members of the ADC had alleged that government has sponsored thugs to come and disrupt their meeting. Some are saying they orchestrated the meeting to make the government look bad. So when it comes to politicians, you really don't know who to believe. So I have to be very careful here. But the facts available is to the fact that there were disruptions, there were injuries and destructions in that place. So I would have expected that it's the ADC that is laying complaints for the police to find who was responsible for this, if I understand that story very well. But it looks like the other way around. But this is where I will beg the institutions, DSS, the police, the army, everybody, to be careful around issues around politicians and the way they behave. For me, politicians can act how they want to act. Sometimes you don't really have, not for all of them, some of them don't even have any iota of noble expectation from them, because that's what they are, mischief, subversion of system, cause trouble here and there, some of them, that's how they work, and they do their politics, but some are decent. So if you allow yourself to be immersed in things like this, you destroy the fabric of the institution. That's the only thing we have left. Somebody will say, look, it's better to have a bad police than not to have police at all. So for me, the police has to be careful, because however I look at it, this will be looked at as suppressing. They have been complaining that the APC, for instance, is using the institutions of state to make sure that there's no viable opposition. And things have been happening. Labour Party, ADC is emerging, legal tussle just now that they took over the party, the coalition. We know what's going on with the PDP. So the least that can happen is to allow these people to gather and do their politicking and plan whatever they want to plan. As long as they are peaceful, they're not violent, they're not breaking any law, let them do their thing. So I don't know the full detail of it, but police inviting people that said they were the ones that were attacked, the optics doesn't look good. And I hope, for the sake of our institution, the police institution, I think now we have Benjamin Hundeyin, who is the new PPRO. Congratulations to him. Muyo Adejobi is now the Deputy Commissioner of Police, I think, in Delta State. This is where the police has to step in to clear themselves properly, so that they are not look like being used. Everybody has been allowed to be used by the ruling party, EFCC, DSS, police now. So we have to be very careful. I'm more interested in those institutions I mentioned. I'm not interested in the politicians themselves, with a greater sense of respect, because politics is what politics is. It's about horse trading, it's about battle, it's about hot hair, it's about trying to win the people. So sometimes some people go to the extreme to do whatever they have to do. It's the law that aggregates all of us, the rule of law that aggregates all of us, to bring sanity into the system. So I hope the police is not being used in this case to do anything, and I hope that the police is just doing their job. But I would have expected that people that were attacked would be the ones to lay complaint. But as I said, I don't have all the facts or the available detail. Maybe when this is done and dusted, they will get to know as what happened and what is playing out. So these are the old pictures of that incident where the people that were converging for that meeting. And they are even alleging that they were supposed to have some condolence visit by some top officials of the Northwest or Northeast region of the ADC. So this all invitation scenario is a plot to make sure that they don't have that meeting. We hope this is not the case. The police must be very careful. I just believe that if people say, for instance, outside this matter, if people say they want to protest, it's not to say don't protest. It's to say, okay, let us know when you're protesting. Let's provide security. Your meeting, let's meet. But Kayode, we mentioned something in passing, and that has to do with the new force PRO. Yesterday or 2 days ago, we saw Muyiwa Adejobi saying, look, he's been redeployed from the Force HQ to Delta State to serve, I think, Deputy Commissioner of Police. And now former Lagos State, because I can call him former now because it's assumed duty, Benjamin Hundeyin is now the force PRO of the police. And congratulations to Benjamin for the promotion, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done, Kayode.
Oh, yes. Uneasy lies the head that wears the crown. This is not the crown now. I mean, we don't call the police the crown here. This is the force in that sense, even though a lot of people have said we should take away the force from the police. But the point is the work or his job is cut out for him. Mr. Muyiwa Adejobi has done his own part. He's now moved on to other things. Clearly, we know what is at stake here with the police. Image maker is what he's called, which means that you need to ensure that the image of the police is seen as strong, approachable, above board, because you are meant to enforce the law, at least uphold the law in that sense. So his job is cut out for him. He must operate an open door policy, ensure that the issues are promptly responded to, and most importantly, to ensure that the trust quotient between the citizens and the police is even built further. It's never an easy job, but it is one that can be done if you are able to just keep your ears to the ground, keep your feet to the ground, and ensure that the people whom you serve are indeed served right and justly. So wish him the very best, Benjamin Hundeyin, from Lagos, from Onikon to Lagos as a state spokesperson, now to the national spokesperson. Wish him the very best.
Well, I'm happy he's a young man, so he should make himself super approachable, engage in a very civil manner. There's a lot of responsibility on you. Benjamin, congratulations to you. Wish you the very best. You have to be closer to your phone than before. You have to be super approachable. You're young, so you should understand the language of young people who sometimes lay complaints about the force when they do wrong. And we're here to praise you guys when you do right, but when you go wrong, we'll be up and telling you. So that's a picture of the old and the new guard. Muyiwa Adejobi, congratulations to him as well for his new posting, and then to Benjamin Hundeyin, who is a new guy in charge of image making of the police. Sometimes all we need is just truth, not swings, not spins, but we hope both of them, Muyiwa, as he said, has done his work. It's not Benjamin's turn to do his work. So we wish him the best. We'll be looking forward to having him on the conversation soon. Okay, guys. Let's bring you up to speed with what we'll be doing on the program today. We'll be looking at democracy and the role of the judiciary in ensuring the stability of democracy. They are critical. They are called the hope or the last hope of the common man. There is a reason for whoever phrased that together, because every other person, the rule of law is what makes all of us equal. Some people may be richer or poorer, more influential, less influential, but the rule of law is the equalizer. But how has the judiciary helped to stabilize the polity and democracy? That's the conversation we'll be having today on the program.
And we continue to battle insecurity internally, particularly in northern Nigeria. One of the governors has said, I know where these people are. I will end this scourge in 2 months. But how far are we from that happening, and what is stopping us? Especially because we're in the context of global security that people have moved on from the old ways of fighting insecurity. We'll find out the way forward on the show today.
And then we're ahead of the Super Eagles encounter against Rwanda, that qualifiers. We will be talking about it. I've been seeing pictures from Uyo from the Nest of Champions. The Godswill Akpabio International Stadium will be the place where they'll lock arms with the Rwandans. We'll bring you up to speed with our sports correspondent and anchor will be letting us know what we need to know as far as this match is concerned.
And we'll be drawing a link between gender inclusion and governance, the success of a nation or otherwise. The Policy Innovation Center has been doing some work in this area. What have they found out? How can we build our nation with more inclusion? And that's also a major talking point on the program today.
Absolutely. Okay, now it's time for us to shift gears to the dailies in just a moment. But let's remind you that sometime next week, that should be Tuesday, we'll be having the chairman of the Fiscal Policy Tax Committee, Taiwo Yedila, on the program. About so many questions you're asking about what we're hearing this new tax will do. He's going to answer all of those questions. So we will bring you up to speed as how you can send in your questions that will ask him directly. Some of the things you're hearing about, is it true? Is it false? Is it that? We'll break it down for you on that particular day. But let's take a moment. We'll be right back. Daya Kintobi is right here with us, one of our regular guests, an analyst of our newspaper dailies. In just a moment, we'll be right back. Join us again. Welcome back. Daya Kintobi is right here with us in our Lagos studio. Mr. Kintobi, thank you so much for coming on the program.
My pleasure indeed. Happy Del Maulud to all Nigerians.
Yes, happy holiday. Do you know, I forgot it was a holiday already. You know, because we don't have holidays, the kind of work we do, we don't, holidays are like, okay, just like another day.
Right,
so
media doesn't take a break.
Yeah, we don't take a break.
No.
So happy holidays to all our Muslim brothers and sisters, and everyone else, and your celebrations as well.
Yes.
You're looking like Coyote in his, I don't know, maybe I need to go and sew this thing.
You guys gave license that on Fridays we can leave the tie behind. So I took sartorial license today.
Fantastic. Let's get to the papers. Vanguard is where we'll start off from, Mr. Kintobi.
Yes.
Vanguard, opposition mounts against FG's 5% tax on petrol, diesel. Stakeholders push against Tinubu's 5% tax, fuel tax. Will mobilize Nigerians against it, a group has said. Why Tinubu's 5% fuel tax should wait, Peter Obi. 5% petrol tax, a cruel burden on struggling Nigerians, the ADC. These are the reasons why we're bringing Taiwo. But what do you make of this?
Yes, it's interesting that you would have mentioned Taiwo Yedele earlier, because this 5% fuel tax is part of the larger tax reform that is going into effect January 1. And essentially what that part of the bill says is that 5% tax should be implemented on refined fuel products, particularly petrol and diesel. So what that means in effect is that you buy 10,000 naira worth of petrol at the pump. From January 1, you'll be paying 10,500 for it. Now, there's always a knock-on effect, because you're buying more petrol. Of course, it has an impact on the cost of transportation. It have an impact on the cost of food. And the general perception from the man in the street is that we're still undergoing enough hardship in this country economically at this time. This is not when we need to pay more for anything. Matter of fact, we're looking for relief and how things will become less expensive, not more. And so it seems on the one hand, the government is giving with the left hand and taking away with the right hand, because you know part of that tax reform is that if you earn under 800,000 naira a year, you are exempt from tax completely. So they've given us relief on with the left hand. They're taking it back with the right hand by this implementation of this tax, which there's no way you look at it, it'll have an impact on prices. It'll have an impact on prices of food, prices of transportation. It'll have an impact one way or the other. And inflation, as you mentioned earlier, while it's holding steady, it's not increasing month by month. It's holding steady, but things are still expensive. Remember, inflation holding steady doesn't mean the prices are reducing. It just means prices are not increasing as quickly as they were before, but things are still expensive. So you add 500 naira to 10,000 naira worth of fuel, it'll have a knock-on effect any which way you look at it.
All right. Kari, will come to you. But let's assure you that this particular question will be one of our first questions to Mr. Ayedele.
Yes.
Is this tax for the consumer at the pump or for the wholesale people who buy it from the depot? That's another kettle of fish. We're not going to be talking, we're not going to be guessing. That day, we're going to break it down for you sometime Tuesday. Kari?
Oh, indeed, Jeffrey. It's going to be an interesting one. So please send in all your questions, areas that you're not clear on regarding those issues. But take a look at New Telegraph. That's where we're headed next. It's lead with something the government has spoken about time and again. Now, almost like when you say, government, you're not doing well, they just show you that. And it's this. States' revenues have more than doubled since subsidy removal. That's coming from the federal government. On the front page of the New Telegraph, you see, even PDP governors are happy with Tinubu. APC North Central chairman say, as ADC accuses government of monetizing hardship, false revenue claims, 5% fuel tax, leadership not about imposing burdens, or B. So it's a very well-packed front page, Mr. Kintobi. But you also see the picture of the president being, how would I say this now, being greeted away. I don't know how to frame this, but you have the, his members of his cabinet, governors, saying farewell to him as he embarks on a 10-day working vacation. I mean, a lot of people have raised issues with that. Well, governors go, you say, well, he's the head of the Nigeria Governors, Progressive Governors Forum, and the other is the governor of Lagos State. So, hey, let them be. But Mr. Kintobi, the big story and the big picture, your choice.
Well, I'll touch on both quickly. I think Jeff already hit the nail on the head in terms of the president's serenading team that, and it was theater of the absurd, just looking at that video of grown men waving at a departing plane, and I couldn't stop. Look at how ridiculous is this, but it's not only President Tinubu that does this. This seems to have become a tradition and a way of doing this. I don't know if they are currying favor with the president or kissing up to him or whatever the case may be, or perhaps that is his own thing for his ego as well. I don't think they would invite themselves. Obviously, that the chief of staff or somebody must have made these arrangements for these important personalities to come and see off the president. I don't really know what it does beyond detracting from governance and wasting resources. So let's not focus on that, because I think it's just really totally an absurdity and a waste of time. Let's talk about the state's revenues that have more than doubled since subsidy removal. Well, yes, the funds that accrue to government from the removal of subsidy are being shared among the states. But the question is, what is being done with that money? Do we see the effect of it? Some on one side have argued that, sure, there's more money, but does that money buy as much as it used to be able to buy before the subsidy was removed? So some governors are arguing that they are really not better off in spite of the more money that's accruing to them, because what it used to cost to build a road before subsidy was removed is costing more now. Because of the devaluation of the naira, cement costs more, concrete costs more, iron rods cost more. All the things you use to build a road cost more now. So even though there's a net gain in the money that accrues to the state governments, they're not able to do as much with it as the less that they had before subsidy removal. But for the common man in the streets, or for the individuals in the states, I think only a few states are showing the fact that they have more money in hand. Most of the other states are still struggling. Some are barely able to meet the minimum wage. Some have zero to less than zero infrastructural development. Primary health care, which is the responsibility of the states and the local governments, is practically comatose. So you ask yourself, is this due to misgovernance? Is it leakages? Is it ghost workers? Or truthfully, is it that the devaluation of the naira has not made us feel the impact of more money going to the states? The one thing we do know is that we are not seeing accelerated development beyond what it used to be before they got more money. So I think we need to interrogate why. Rather than speculating and wondering what the cause of it is, we need to ask harder questions about why are we not seeing a lot more development if you do have more money? Is it the case that the Naira devaluation has affected the much you can do, or is it that there are other issues relating to corruption and mismanagement?
Quite important question, Mr. Akintobi. A lot. In fact, I was seeing a comparison somewhere. Someone said, "Oh, it's not all bad. Nigeria's PMS price." They were doing comparison of, in dollar terms, how much PMS is being sold across the region, converting it to Naira. But that argument is a bit incomplete, because the way you compare is not just in dollar. So if you say in dollar terms, so for instance, now in dollar terms, Nigeria is less because some people are paying as much as $2.
Yes.
As at 900 is less than even $1.
It is.
It's about some cents.
Yes.
Maybe 60 or 70 cents. So
yes.
in dollar terms, it's way less. But it's now a question of how many units of your currency are you using to buy that particular amount of PMS. Because
yes.
that's the way I look at it from numbers point of view.
Absolutely.
To challenge us to do better because some of us believe that Naira is grossly devalued.
Yes.
This is, I don't think the Naira should be at 1.5.
No.
But even the CBN governor has raised that this Naira is totally devalued. It's undervalued. I think that's the right word.
Right.
Undervalued.
Yes.
It can be better than that.
Absolutely.
But, it's good for FPIs, because when it's stable and it has that kind of amount and our interest rate is high, it's good for people who do business and investors. But let's go to, I think I saw one paper here. Yes. Nigerian News Direct says, I was betrayed during 2015 election. I was betrayed during 2015 election. Okay, that's according to Jonathan. He said, so I don't know what brought this, what fora he was talking about, but there's been this, nuance and touting of wooing or trying to woo the president, former president, I should say, to run. I don't think he will accept, in my view. But maybe this is a subtle reply to some of the persons, in 2015, what we saw was there were frontline opposition. Like that time, it was not the amorphous one we have now with what is going on with the PDP. That time, Rotimi Amechi was very clear, mobilized his people, governors left and joined the APC. So it was very clear that there were enemies within that left him to join the opposition, and they got the result. But there are also enemies within that got that result. Now, I don't even understand the amorphous politics. What do you think is making him say this?
Well, yesterday he was at the birthday party of his former chief of staff, Michael Giadome, and he basically was laying accolades on the man and said he is one of the few people in politics that are totally trustworthy and loyal, and that man would take a bullet for him. Whatever the man told you in the morning is the same thing he would tell you at night, unlike most Nigerian politicians who generally are disingenuous. They're two-faced, and you can't rely on anybody's word. And he now extended that to say that part of why he lost in 2015 was due to betrayals. Yes, there was a lot of insider opposition to his candidacy. Remember, there were some people who initially felt that when he completed President Yar'Adua's first term, that by him running again in 2011, he should have allowed the North to complete their 8 years.
Yeah,
so
that was a big problem.
He already had a problem that some people were antagonistic towards him because they felt he robbed the North of completing their 8-year term. So by the time he was ready to run for his own second term, there was already opposition arrayed against him, even in his own party, as well as this opposition that coalesced. Remember, the APC came into being as a formidable entity primarily to unseat him and to get the PDP out of power. And they did it. The opposition to him was so unified and so it fermented into such strong virility that they actually were able to launch an offensive against him and succeeded. So I would say part of the betrayal he's talking about relates to the fact that he himself couldn't take the moral high ground per se because he was seen as an illegitimate contender at the time he was trying to run. So the question is, his statements yesterday can read between the tea leaves to use them to forecast what he's saying about 2027. You have the opinion that he won't run in 2027. Some people say the Nigerian politician will always tell you that due to the yearnings of my people, my people have been coming and coming in droves, and all they've been doing is telling me so I have to aspire to the will of what the people want. They're clamoring for my candidacy. So some people think that if the elements align properly, there's quite a bit of opposition to the government in power now. There are some people who, a wide swath of the country, believe that they were better off under the last Goodluck Jonathan administration than they've been in the last 10 years under the APC. So there's some people who yearn back for that time. What was the dollar rate in 2015? What was the cost of fuel in 2015?
Those were pegged.
Yes, of course. Well, I think it's also a function of timing, that whoever, even if Jonathan was there today, some of the numbers we are seeing today are what we'd be seeing. I think there are global issues, there are COVID issues. So a lot
times have changed.
Yes, times have changed. So it's not automatically guaranteed that because we were in halcyon days during Goodluck Jonathan's time, means that if he were to come back, it would be the same thing again.
Fantastic point you've raised. That interview always interesting to to hear you give your perspective on what the Daily is saying. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program.
My pleasure always. Thank you.
And have a great weekend. Enjoy it for yourself.
Wish you the same, and wish all Nigeria the same.
All right, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be talking about the role of the judiciary in stabilizing democracy, because there's a lot that is going on that we need to talk about, because that's what we do as media, set agenda. Kyle will be taking that in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. Let's talk about the law as far as the rule of law is concerned in Nigeria. Kemini Udim is a legal practitioner joining us virtually. Ms. Udim, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
I think my first question will pander around how important it is for the role. I think we have a lot of, especially those of us who are not lawyers, have a lot of expectation and assumption as to the importance of the role of the judiciary in stabilizing democracy. And so that's why when perhaps the people don't see things being done the way they expect it to be done, they react. So I'll give you an example. For instance, now, this controversial issue, I think this month the governor of Rivers State is going to be reinstated by the president after he was suspended by the president and the members of the assembly. The debate whether he has that powers is still a contentious issue. So PDP governors went to court to say the president doesn't have that power. In fact, help us interpret, does he have that power? We were thinking that by now, that issue would have been brought to rest. I remember we had Professor Wole Soyinka here, who also alluded to the fact that once and for all, let's just resolve this issue so that we don't go back and forth. But the Supreme Court has been quiet. We don't know what is going on. The suspension is about to elapse. Perhaps this, I only remember that there was a time on Wike, for instance, as part of his condition to the PDP and the governors, who said they should withdraw that case. I don't know whether it was withdrawn to the best of my knowledge. We can come to the issue of Lagos State last year, where some parts of the laws, the electoral acts were breached and they were taken to court. They've argued on their own, but that case has been adjourned to February next year. We could go on, but these are just the quick cases. So this is what raises questions in the mind of people as to the role of the judiciary and their ability to brave up to do its work when the issues are before them and not to pander, allege, to whims and caprices. But help us make sense of the situation.
Well, thank you so much for having me. The judiciary remains a very important institution in any democracy. In fact, during military rule, you would recall that every other aspect of government, every other institution of government was suspended, but the judiciary was never suspended. And that tells a whole lot about the place of the judiciary. Remember that before now, society was governed by emperors. And the emperor was the legislature, was the executive, and was also the judiciary. And so if the emperor said, I don't like your face, that was the end of that person. and the person still executed. And Jean Montesquieu, came up with the theory of separation of powers, and then spoke about the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary, and gave that specific role to the judiciary, the role of interpretation of the laws and putting the other arms of government, within checks and balances. And the Nigerian judiciary has been doing this, for many years now. Judiciary has been there, one of the oldest institutions in Nigeria, right from colonial time till today. The judiciary is still there. In section 6 of the Constitution, you also see the judiciary clearly being provided for. But I agree with you regarding the cases you just reeled out, the concerns of Nigerian citizens about the speed in the delivery of judgments, the delivery of justice in Nigeria. Every lawyer that goes to court would want his matter to be decided as quickly as possible. But sadly, and this is very sad, most of the cases filed in this country are not decided as quickly as they would have been decided. And I think this is worrisome. I think that a situation where cases stay in court until they become academic, for instance, you mentioned the River State matter. River State matter, 6 months ago, a sole administrator was appointed and then sent to River State. People went to court challenging that. The governors of the PDP in particular went up to the apex court challenging that. One would have expected that matter, because it's a constitutional matter, because it's a matter that needs to be decided, to lay the precedent. One would have expected that it would be decided before this time. And I think on the 18th of this month, the sole administrator's 6 months would have expired. And when that happens, it therefore means that that case stands the risk of becoming an academic matter. And a matter is academic when it has no useful value anymore. Yes, it can still be decided by the Supreme Court, but basically it will now be for the classroom. I think that our cases should be decided as quickly as possible, so as for people to know their fate, and so as for our democracy to be strengthened by the decisions of courts of law in this country.
Okay, so as a matter of fact, the reason why this is important is because there's a lot of hope. When we hear of issues around, because we're not just going to dwell around the political issues alone, we're going to talk about several other issues. I've had a senior advocate of Nigeria talk about them being overburdened, then them even being under duress in some situations to make certain decisions. Then there is a corruption element. Then there are people that stand on their ground and they are being opposed from. So there are different slants and different angles. So the issues around the role of the judiciary in ensuring. But there seems to be a general crisis of confidence wherever you look within our institutions, judiciary not excluded. So for you, what are because when this Chief Justice of Nigeria was appointed, Justice Kekereekun was appointed, female, no nonsense, there were loads of expectations. She's done quite some things, because we can remember some people have been forcefully retired. There's been reprimand, demotions, suspension from promotion. So we've seen some movement that has sent signals to some of the excesses by members of the bench. We're going to come to your members, who are the members of the bar, in just a moment. But what do you think can be done to really send, more like what happened with the economy, the shock wave that the policy of government sent to the economy that all of us are feeling till today and tomorrow? What can be done in the judiciary to really transform and rebuild the confidence in that sector? Because some people don't trust the judiciary. In fact, if some people have cases, they just say they go into court, they're not interested anymore, because they feel that time, adjournment, and all of that is going to be a waste of their time, for some.
Well, a whole lot needs to be done, because a whole lot is wrong with the justice system in Nigeria. When you look at infrastructure in the courts in this country, in fact, you would be thanking judges so much for adjudicating matters, in most of the court halls in this country. Now, when you look at the legislature, you look at the executive, these two arms of government appear to enjoy so much of introduction of technology. But the judicial arm of government is still one arm of government that is still far away from technology. Most judges still write in longhand in this country. And when that happens, as you are talking, the judge is writing. I've been a lawyer for close to 2 decades now, and I have been in courts like every other day, up to the highest court in this land. And I can say that most of our courts, judges are still writing in longhand. So as you are talking, the judges are writing, and as you are flowing, the judge is breaking the flow and saying, "Counsel, do you know I'm writing?" And you have to stop for the judge to write. And this delays the adjudication of matters. And I think that proper budgetary provisions need to be given to the judiciary in every budget, be it of the federal or of the states of the federation. And I also think that there should be judicial autonomy. If the money is appropriated in the budget and then released directly to the heads of the courts in this country, I'm sure perhaps they would have been able to fix the things that should be fixed. Technology should be the least that we should expect from the courts, in the 21st century. Now, we also look at the issue of the number of justices. The Constitution of Nigeria has given a limit. I think it is 22, not above 22 justices in the Supreme Court. And we've never had the full complement of that court, except during this administration where His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu had to send names to the National Assembly for approval, and we now have the full complement of the judiciary, of the Supreme Court. But then 22 is still a far cry. This is a country that has not less than 200 million people. Cases come from all over the country to the Supreme Court, with only 22 persons sitting to hear these cases. I think that there is need for constitutional amendments so that we can increase the number from 22 and then take it up to 50, and let it be such that we can have the Supreme Court sit in 3 court halls concurrently. Every day, the court number 1, court number 2, court number 3, you have full complement of the justices of the court sitting. And in such situation, then cases will be decided, with the speed that it is expected. Now, you remember that Simon Ekpa was arrested a few months back. And just a few days ago, judgment has been delivered in his matter in Finland. He knows his fate. If Simon were to be arrested in Nigeria, I find it difficult to see if Simon would have been, fully tried within this few period of time. These few months that he was arrested, Simon would have still been maybe in the DSS custody. He would have been going to court. Adjournment would have been coming every now and then. The judge would have been writing in longhand and so on. So this is what we need to bring into the justice system of Nigeria: speed in trial of cases. And I think that when these things are done, the confidence will be restored to the judicial system. We also need to look at the issue of appointment of judicial officers. Let's keep it open. Let's make it accessible. Let's make it available for every qualified citizen of this country. Let us not allow politics to take the center stage. Let it be for those that are qualified and are ready to also do the work. You have seen lots of persons that have been made judicial officers, and they don't really have, that determination to do the work. So what am I talking about here? Let us keep the process of recruitment of judicial officers very open, very transparent, make it available for every citizen of the country that is duly qualified by the Constitution. And I think that if this is done and other things are added to the justice system in this country, I'm sure we can have, because we have so many judges that are ready to work. If they are given the enablement to work, the environment that is suitable for the work, I am sure that most of the cases that get delayed today in our courts would have been able to enjoy the speed that is needed. When you have a financial matter, for instance, that goes to the courts, and it takes 10 years to decide the financial matter, when it went to the courts, Naira and dollar was 84 Naira to $1. And how much is a dollar today to Naira? So there is need for speed in the justice system so that truly the justice system, the judiciary, would be the hope, the last hope of the common man in this country.
Well, Mr. Kimini, I recall that Justice John Soho recently said that the Nigerian judiciary is on trial for inefficiency and issues around corruption, but he expressed some optimism. And I wonder for you if you also share that, those sentiments, because for a lot of people, They have termed this go to court. There's a saying now, go to court, and they just think going to court means you might not get justice. And this is an image that is being reinforced in the minds of a lot of people. Once they think about going to court, they remember the go to court statements that were made, and they're like, will we really get justice? So in terms of image, there's a lot that needs to be done. We're just talking about the image of the police and how, more work needs to be done naturally. So for the judiciary as well, there is that perception issue. Do you see that? And how do you think the judiciary can come back from this? Because that's really vital.
Yeah, I am confident that the judiciary can regain its image, 100% in this country. All we need to do is to do the right things that should be done for the confidence to be restored. I cannot blame any citizen of the country who cries out to say that this matter has been in court for 10 years, for 5 years, for 3 years or so. You cannot also blame a citizen of the country that is quarreling with the image of the judiciary. What the judiciary needs to do is to ensure that the image of the judiciary is restored in full so that citizens of the country will have that confidence. What do I mean? Let matters be decided with the speed of light, so to say. It doesn't make sense that a matter is filed in court today and it takes 5 years to decide the matter. I have mentioned the Simon Ekpa's matter. We recall that Simon Ekpa's matter went to court a few months ago, I think at the beginning of the year. And in less than 1 year, the matter is decided and Simon knows his fate and Simon perhaps will go on appeal. And if it took very little time to try him, then it will also take little time to hear the appeal. In this country today, appeals stay for up to 5, 6, 7 years. If your appeal is decided in 3 years, that means your matter is very lucky. Even after counsel have filed all that needed to be filed, it still takes a lot of time before the appeal is heard. And sometimes you don't also blame the judges. It is because they are being overworked. You see, you go to a typical trial court in Lagos, and you see that the judge could have as much as 30 cases on the first list to try. And other places, you have 40, you have 20, and most times they are writing in longhand from morning till night. These are human beings. They're expected to be tired. So Nigeria knows what to do to the justice system. I have said that the legislature enjoys so much budgetary allocation and also enjoys technology. The executive also enjoys technology. But a typical courtroom in Nigeria is devoid of technology. And that's why the judge is still writing in longhand. How are we talking now and we're not writing and yet it is recorded? It can be played back. The same technology can be brought into the courtroom, and the technology of recording is not a new technology. So you would wonder why courts in Nigeria still write in longhand, and judges will have to go for operation to operate their fingers because they have been writing for so long, longhand. And when you travel to other countries of the world, whenever I travel out, I take a day or two and sit in a court of that country. In most of the countries I have gone to, technology is fully deployed to the courtrooms and the judges are not writing in longhand. And that is why some lawyers have been called upon to go to the bench and they say no in this country because for them, they will not be able to cope with the kind of working environment that judges are subjected to. So I call for, budgetary provision. Do we have judicial autonomy? If we do not have, let us give that autonomy to the judiciary and make sure that funds are allocated to them and that the judiciary should also be accountable to the Nigerian people because it's not just about the Nigerian people asking for funds to be allocated and at the end of the day, we do not see statement of accounts, giving us details of the expenditure of the judiciary. Just as we expect details of expenditure of other arms of government, we also expect details of expenditure of the judiciary. How were contracts awarded? Was it through bidding? If it wasn't through bidding, why? And so on. I think that if these things are fixed, then the Nigerian justice system, remember that this is a country that has sent judges abroad. We have so many of our judges that had gone to West African countries to adjudicate matters for those countries. That says something about Nigeria, that we have competent officers in the justice system that can deliver justice. Okay, so what we need to do is to ensure that we fix the things that needs to be fixed. And we also have to look at the recruitment process. Let the woman in Wuse
Yes.
markets who has been selling periwinkle, who has been selling, vegetable, and has been able to train her child to school, and the child becomes a lawyer, and the child is qualified by the Constitution to be appointed a judicial officer. Let us have a situation where that woman's child can be appointed a judicial officer when the woman knows nobody in politics.
Yes.
If we have that, then we'll be able to have the best crop of persons and those that are willing to work, becoming judicial officers, and then doing the work of the judiciary and keeping this country
great point you've raised. Yes.
In the democracy that we have.
Yeah, Mr. Kamini raised. In fact, you've gone another way now that we don't have time to explore. That had to do with the issue of the wives and children of politically exposed persons being populated in the bench, including senior judicial officers having their own children, follow that line, which has become a contentious issue sometime about competence as against exposure and all of that. But Omar, thank you for your insight as far as this issue is concerned. It's not done. We continue to speak about our institutions to make the most of it. Ekemini Udim is a legal practitioner who joined us virtually. Thank you, sir, for your expertise.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we will be talking about security. Now, Zamfara State Governor, for instance, has said he knows via his phone where the bandits are, and he knows what to do, but is incapacitated, maybe by legislation. Now, some persons are saying he's hiding information from security agencies. Well, an expert will be breaking it down for us, how to reconcile all of these angles and the decentralization of our security architecture. In just a moment, stay with us.
Let's talk security. We have joining us on the program Dr. Kabir Adamu, MD, Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited, and a security expert. Dr. Adamu, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you, Coyote. Last time I saw you were in Ukraine.
Well, the Zamfara State Governor's statement. Well, thank you, Dr. Adamu. The statement by the Zamfara State Governor is still sending shockwaves across board, politically, in the security space as well. But, I mean, this is not the first time he said something like this. He says, well, he can tell where the bandits are, and all he needs is 2 months. He will bring banditry to an end. What do you see this as? The normal rhetoric that you expect to come from a leader, the governor, who's trying to make a statement that, I don't have enough powers. Or you think this is taken too far, Dr. Adamu?
Thank you. I think let's start by looking at how security is structured, and then the powers that the governor has in terms of what I would call the national security enterprise, which makes up the structures, the instruments, and the people that run security in a country. Now, the way Nigeria is structured, security is in the exclusive list, and that means the federal government has more role, as it were, to play in national security. But then the governors, too, have been given some powers, and I'll quickly explain some of these powers. The most important one for the purpose of our conversation is that they chair the State Security Council. In other words, each governor has the power to sit with all the federal security agencies that are deployed in his state, in that Security Council, and he's the chairman of the that State Security Council. So at that point, he's able to discuss with each of them to say, these are my concerns, and this is what I expect you, as based on your mandate, to achieve. Now, the second thing that is relevant to our conversation is the security vote that the governors received. And on your platform, Daniel Boala, who is now with the president, did indicate the amount of money that each governor receives as security vote. Now, we know that the governors dish out or dole out that money to these federal security agencies. But the challenge is this. There is no transparent manner for auditing how that money is given out and what that money is used for. Now, having said that, it means the governor, on the one hand, has the power, using this Security Council, to determine to a large extent what these federal security agencies do. He also, by the money that he gives them, is able to influence, even if he's not able to direct their activities. So to that extent, where a governor is able to have structures in place to allow him not just to determine, but also to measure the performances of these organizations, then you see a better output. A good example I'll give is Lagos. The Lagos state government has been able to establish structures that would allow it to influence the outcome of the activities of the federal security agencies. So when Lagos set up the Lagos Security Trust Fund, and then uses that trust fund to purchase equipment, to purchase several things for the federal security agencies, it has given it leverage and ability to influence what the federal security agencies do. So now let's take ourselves to Zamfara within the context of what the governor of Zamfara stated. It's possible that he may have, as he mentioned, knowledge of where these bandits are. And of course, we do know. There is no bandit that is not known. All of them are known. Their whereabouts are known. Their businesses are known. Those of them who control the gold mines, that is known. That is not hidden information. But I think the challenge is that he hasn't put in place the structures in the manner that I've described them to be able to effectively supervise and then ensure that the outcome of his engagement with them is better in the manner that the Lagos state government has done. So his statement may be correct, but part of the fault would go with him. The second point, which is also important, is the fact that the federal government has not provided a framework for addressing the challenge of banditry. And that means there is no map, as it were, that the state governor can follow. Kaduna State is doing a different thing. Katsina is doing something different. Zamfara, of course, is doing different. In some instances, they are not doing anything, actually. They are just attempting to experiment with outcomes. So this is the atmosphere that we found ourselves, and that is why the governor is able to make that statement. And while on the one hand, he may be right in the sense, but then on the other hand, he has certain responsibilities that if he had done them properly, would have given him the power, as it were, to direct and influence better the activities of the federal security agencies within his state.
Well, you've brought different moving parts into this conversation, Dr. Adamu. So I want to see if we can break them down. So first, he has the powers to sit down with the heads of security agencies in the state. Does he have powers to order them on what to do? Because say he can't even give an order to an officer, police officer in that sense, talk more of a DPO or all of that. He has to come from the Inspector General or from above. So I'd like you to speak to that. In terms of the security votes, yes, the president's aide had said they receive between 1 to 2 or 3 billion naira. Well, they end up giving the DSS 20 million naira monthly, the Army 20 million, and all of that. Are you saying that they're not using the security votes well? So that will mean that there are questions that they must answer, but they will tell you that it is also classified, the security spending, so they can't exactly share what they use it for. Now, the third bit is, if we would actually want to test what the governor of Zamfara State said, what must be done to give him those powers that he wants? And we give him 2 months and say, fine, you have those powers, you have 2 months also, let's see what you can do. Do you think that would be fair game?
Okay, starting with your first question, yes, he sits as the chair of the State Security Council, and all the federal security agencies are members of that Security Council. So normally what happens is they come, they present, in a way, reports to him. Each of them has a mandate. If it's the military, the mandate of the military is very clear. The police has a mandate, very clear. The customs, name them, all the federal security agencies that are deployed at the subnational level. Let's remember there are roughly 19 of them, and some of them are deployed at the subnational level, others are not deployed, but most of the 19 are there, and they would sit, they would present that report to him. And more importantly, we have to tie the second question to the first question, the request for funding from him. I stand to be challenged, but almost all of them, apart from what they get from their headquarters, also receive money from the state governor in terms of support for different things. It could be to foil their vehicle. It could be to, name them, so many things. So that is where he's able to influence their activities. I agree, and I am not in doubt about that. He can't direct their field operations. In other words, he can't tell them, this is where Bello Turji is, so go and arrest Bello Turji. He doesn't have that powers. But he can, for instance, during those discussions, tell them that from between this period, I'm giving you X amount of money, and this is what I expect you to do with the money. Now, let's say the money is meant for foiling vehicles, or it's meant for providing electricity, or whatever, at their divisions. And then through that, he tells them, okay, I expect improved security in, say, Gusau local government or in Kauranamuda local government. And then after the period that he has given them that money, they come back at the next Security Council meeting in a month's time, and there is no improvement in that local government. Now he has the power at that point to ask them, Commissioner, what happened? General, so, what happened? Why is there no improvement? So that is the level that he could, interrogate them. Of course, like I said, he can't direct their field operations, but he could do that. Now the challenge is this, and this is where most governors, unfortunately, are unable to hold to account these federal security agencies. They do not have an independent system of evaluating the performance of the organizations. Very few states have developed independent systems, and I gave the example of Lagos. Lagos has an independent system of evaluating the performance of these federal agencies. So by the time they sit with them, they're able to ask them critical questions based on the reports, independent reports they have. Lagos has the Command and Control Center, through which it's able to collate reports that give a clear indication of all the local governments in terms of their security performances month to month. Now that would allow the governor to look the commissioner in the eye to say, Commissioner, in this particular location, there is room for improvement. But most states, including states like Zamfara, do not have that capacity. So in other words, where the governor does not have an intelligence capability that is independent of what these federal agencies have, it makes it very difficult for him to hold them to account. So the commissioner of police is at liberty to come and tell the governor that this is the reason why I'm not performing in so-so location. But the governor cannot look at the commissioner and say, Commissioner, this is what I'm hearing. Your men are not deployed in so-so location, in spite of the promise you made to me in August that your men will be deployed. So that's kind of the gap that allows the governor to make that statement. And like I said, the responsibility is partly his own. Now tie that to the fact that there is no state in Nigeria at the moment that does not have a structure, a subnational structure, either in the form of a vigilante group or, like they call them in the Northwest, the community guard structures. So when you add all of that, you realize that the governor does have enormous influence. And if he understands public security in the manner that I've just described it, then he will be able to do much more better than they're doing at the moment. But I think the challenge is that public security, there is no accountability within that public security space, both politically and then operationally. And that makes it difficult, as it were, for everyone to hold to account people within the public security space, starting from the highest level, which is the president, down to the governors, and then of course the sectional heads within the public space.
All right, Dr. Kabiru, let's look at, in fact, we're putting up the translation of what the governor has said, in fact, saying that if not for the inability in law for him, and he swore by the things he holds sacred, that in 2 months, the issue of bandits would have been over. At the risk of sounding naive from me, what are we dealing with here? Bandits, their mission, terrorists, their mission is to terrorize and kill and maim. Their mission is quite clear: destruction, anything that brings sadness for their own personal well-being. And that is what the state stands against. By the state, the sovereignty of our nation stands against. So if these people are clear on their mandate, and the governor says, with my phone, I can tell you exactly where they are, I know what to do if I had the power. And then I read one report somewhere, some persons were saying that the governor not sharing information there's a way they described it. If the governor knows where they are and there are security chiefs, security service commanders in the states and all the apparatus available to him, what are we dealing with here? Are we dealing with issue of power or we're dealing with issue of trust?
I think in simple terms, we're dealing with a situation of absence of accountability. Jeffrey, everyone who knows his onion within the security space knows where these bandits are. I repeat, everybody within the security space who knows his onions knows where these bandits are. I would add to you that apart from knowing their physical presence, we have knowledge of their businesses. Bello Turji has businesses that are known to the security agencies. So the governor's statement is correct. What is missing is accountability within the security space. As far back as 2019, 60 bases of these bandits were identified by the military. 60 were identified by the military. It will be interesting, for the military to explain now to Nigerians how many of those 60 bases were destroyed from that 2019 up until, let's say, 2023, when this government came into place. And then from that 2023 up until now, how many of those bases have been destroyed? So the governor is correct. He's not, he's not the only one who has that knowledge. Everyone within the security space has that knowledge. But the challenge, like I said, is accountability. We are not holding those within the security space accountable in a clear manner. I speak about monitoring and evaluation. I speak about the oversight function that the National Assembly should have in the manner. If we're doing it, we won't be where we are at the moment. And I agree with the governor, 2 months is enough to at least contain the violence, even if we do not deal with it completely, but to contain it, then to allow the other components of peace building to now take place. For the avoidance of doubt, I agree with the governor. Knowledge of these bandits is known. What is absent is accountability.
This is very, I don't know whether it's heartbreaking, confusing, disturbing. You've made a very profound statement that you know exactly where, everybody who knows their onion in the security space know exactly where they are. And I don't even know where to go from there with that revelation. I don't know, for some persons it's a revelation that the people, they know where they are, they even know their businesses. And this is why people may be thinking sometimes that for certain things to thrive, the state may even be involved. And these are allegations that can be laid. And you won't blame them because they feel that if you're interested in us, you'll protect us. But before we let you go, Dr. Adamu, let's talk about why we're not doing things that are like what I'll call more like low-hanging fruits. Why is it that in 2025, we don't have at least a formation, any of our formation, let's even start with the police, that wears simple things like body cam? I understand like our police, maybe about 300,000, 400,000, the numbers keep changing. And we have different special units and then the general ones. Why can't we have simple things like body cam? How hard can it be when our security budget is, the biggest all the time? I just wanted to find out from you. Is there a reason why we don't have that? Because it will help protect the policeman and protect all of us that they are protecting as well.
Yeah, we must commend the current president. If you look at his renewed hope agenda and the police reforms element within that renewed hope agenda, introducing technology is actually a key element within that renewed hope agenda. And to be fair to him, again, as part of that commendation, the performance measurement scheme that he has introduced measures the ability of the police to introduce technology within policing. But again, the challenge is that there are leakages within the security spectrum. That national security enterprise that I described at the beginning of our conversation has so many leakages that allows, unfortunately, the funding streams that would allow technology to be introduced within the system to be almost impossible. Because where, for instance, you are dealing with basic issues like salary, welfare, name them, then the technology, the methodology would suffer. And anyone who doubts me should just remember that a few weeks back, we had a protest by police retirees. And one of the consequences of that protest is that we monitored, and of course, as you know, I run an organization, and part of what we do is collect available open information. So most of the serving police officers aligned with that protest. They agreed that their welfare is horrible. They agreed that their salary is pathetic. They agreed that their living conditions are extremely pathetic. So where you have such a situation, Jeffrey, unfortunately, the leadership, the police management will be dealing with those basic issues. And that is why I think the current Inspector General of Police is doing a lot in terms of housing. He's doing a lot in terms of mechanisms to improve the welfare of the police. But sadly, because of the decay that the police has been in over a very long period, it will take a bit of time before he addresses those basic issues. And it is, I guess, after he addresses those basic issues, that he will now look at these other bigger ones. And I think the argument, and I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with me, is what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Should he now abandon those basic ones and then focus on this technology? But like I said, the platform has been provided for him. The president strongly believes in introducing technology within policing, and the performance of the police, as it were, is being measured with how much it has been able to introduce technology within the system. And I think I would also say that a lot has been done from where we used to be. Some aspects of technology are being introduced. As an example, they are able to, for instance, make some policing functions, including arrest and prosecution, using a bit of technology. But there is a lot that remains to be done. You gave the example of body cams. That's just one example. But remember that the body cam would lie on a system, an echo space that, for instance, is not just wearing the body cam, but where does the feed from the videos of that body cam, where does it go to? It will go somewhere. And then, of course, once that feed goes there, it has to be captured. And more importantly, Jeffrey, it would have to be analyzed at the end of a period. So it's not just the body cam, but the structure. And one of the things that I've been recommending of recent is for us to recognize the relevance and the importance that the Federal Ministry of Communication, Innovation, and I think digital, whatever, can play within the security space. Most security organizations attempt to recreate their own structures, but I don't think where we are in Nigeria at the moment, they can even do that. They don't have the funding. So why don't they extend a handshake to that federal ministry so that what if that federal ministry does? And I'm very happy with Minister Bosun Tijani. He's doing a lot, and he can, I'm sure, extend that to the security organizations. AI is an example. In today's world, there's very much that AI can do to support security functions, including policing. And I know that the minister has put up a very good structure and a strategy as well for AI implementation.
We'll see how that plays out, Dr.
Adamo,
but what I will never understand is how you hear people say, we know where they are, we know who they are, we know their business, and yet nothing is being done. We have to thank you so much, Dr. Kabiru Adamo, for sharing your insights in this all-important conversation around security.
Thank you for having me.
We'll take a quick break now. When we return, we have two more important conversations for you. The Super Eagles and gender inclusion. Why is it important to us as a nation? We'll find out in a moment. Stay with us.
Mom surprise! Wow! Yaya?
Kaga kamata ko ni nasa mbasa wata kanu.
Yanzu yarinyar na hatta manta gida?
Bari nin dafa.
Mom's Pride seasoning cubes, now available in Kayamia flavor. A perfect blend of ingredients like garlic, ginger, onion, cloves, and many more. Mom's Pride Kayamia, Mom's Pride Dadawa, and Mom's Pride beef flavor. Mom's Pride. Share the pride.
Meet Ife, procurement manager and queen of multitasking. She's had her fair share of stress, from sourcing products for crazy prices overseas to logistics madness.
Not anymore with Super App. Hello, the package just arrived. No hassle, and on time.
Join millions of businesses on Super App today and be a part of Africa's digital renaissance. Visit superapp.tdafrica.com to get started. TD Africa, empowering you. Hey, Chooks don't do this electronic business. Hey, to find supplier we sure, no be beans.
Hello? Okay, I don't confirm everything for the warehouse. Now to bring the goods come.
This Super App, all they are very fast to.
Chooks, they get everything for him shop on Super App. Original products, better prices, no stress. Join millions of businesses on Super App today and be a part of Africa.
Welcome back. Cecilia Morogwe, our sports anchor and correspondent, joins us right here in our Lagos studios. Of course, Celia, let's hit it. Tomorrow is the big day. Yeah. I'm looking at the table. 13 points for South Africa, Rwanda 8, Benin Republic 8, Nigeria 7, 6 for Lesotho, Zimbabwe 4.
Yeah.
Help us make sense of what's playing out here.
What's the sense here? The sense right here is that we have to win remaining 4 games. We have opportunity. You had 10 games. Yes, the remaining 4 games. And if you win all of them, yes, you get a ticket to the 2026 World Cup. It is that simple. Because it's actually unthinkable for Super Eagles to actually miss World Cup back-to-back. We were in Qatar, one of the best World Cups ever organized. And then the U.S., we know how good we are at the U.S. soil. The first time we actually qualified for the World Cup was USA 94, right?
Atlanta 94.
Then USA 94. And then after that, Atlanta 96, where we won a gold medal, you know, at the Olympics. So you're looking at those 2 times we've been there. And of course, we've been successful. So you're now looking at opportunities to play across 3 countries, Mexico, Canada, and USA. It's unthinkable that we will not be there. Well, it's easy, as I have mentioned, and the Super Eagles, I think they understand the mission. And what is the mission? What is the vision? Qualify for the World Cup. We win your remaining games. True Second was talking about they need to do the talking on the field of play. They understand how big of a task they're actually facing now. Rwanda is on Saturday. You beat Rwanda away from home 2-0. That's the only game they've won so far. They played 6 games, winning just 1. The others, you know, draws. And then you're looking at the Super Eagles, you're asking yourself, how did we get here? We got here because of complacency. I mean, if you read out the names, right, who could have thought that at this time that we will be struggling to beat teams like Lesotho, Zimbabwe, Rwanda? We understand South Africa, but then these other countries are countries that you think we could have easily beaten. Austin was talking about that they need to make a statement win, like up to 4-5-0. I'm like, is it from this crop of players? I mean, players, the first full training session these guys had was on Wednesday. I mean, camp opened on Monday. You see this strolling in. So we are still having that attitude of, yes, I'm a big boy. I can walk in anytime and then get a shirt. So I don't know what the coach needs to do, Eric Shell. He has a lot on his head right now. He wouldn't want to have that unwanted record of not qualifying Nigeria for the World Cup. We saw the disaster in Chan. So that's really not helping. We may have won the Unity Cup in London. I thought that, you know, will kind of spur us on to believe in the Super Eagles. If you ask a Nigerian right now, do you think they can qualify? They don't have that that belief at all. But I think at this time that the belief is going down, the trust is no longer there. Just maybe this is the time for the Super Eagles to, like, you know what, we need to get our fans back. We need to actually give them something to cheer about. Just maybe they might do the talking on the field of play.
So let's do some quick mapping within the time we have. Quick mappings. What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses?
Yeah, I think it's the midfield, really. We've not seen the connection between midfield and the attack. You know, we are big on wing plays. We've not been saying that. We don't create chances. So you could see, if you check the game, we're not conceding goals because our defense is very solid and we have a good goalkeeper. But what happened in the midfield? Maybe we can have Ndidi and Oyekachi, maybe two of them pairing in the defense line, in the midfield. Maybe then you have likes of Moses Simon, Chukwueze, because we've got the stars, we've got the players, the Demola Lukmo, you've got Victor Osimhen, Siri Desas is back in the squad. So these guys, we know that they can actually score goals and then they can make some fantastic passes. So just maybe we can go back to our wing plays, you know, just let that connection be there between the midfield and the attack. And once they get the ball, you don't need Osimhen to go to the midfield or the defense line to start struggling for balls for him to score. If he gets that supply, that connection, I think actually get us the goals we need, really. We just need to be scoring goals. That's what we've not been doing, really. We're not conceding so much, but we're not scoring.
I like the psychological tone you're giving them. That is simple as that. I don't know how simple it is.
It's easy, yes.
So, prediction, before I let you go.
Oh, gosh.
For me right now,
really.
a zero win. Like, if zero is winning,
no.
I don't care.
We need to make a statement. We need to bring back that belief. I mean, a 3-0 win is perfect. 3-0, because we've not won at home since we started the World Cup qualifiers. Wow. Is that bad?
Well, Super Eagles, you're out there, you're listening to us, I guess, from your hotel rooms and the coaching crew, I hope. Cecilia, thank you, and thank you for your patience. I know you've been waiting to come on. But we're going to maybe bring you back after that match to see whether your prediction was right or wrong. But we're hopeful.
Amen.
That Thank you, Cecilia. All right, that's Cecilia Omorogbe, our correspondent and our sports anchor. Let's, Kayode, it's over to you now.
Well, Jeffrey and Cecilia, on a lighter note, we didn't have to do all of this permutations and calculations with the Super Falcons. You know, we didn't have this much heart palpitations when the Super Falcons were playing. We wish the Super Eagles the very best, and we're supporting them. We just hope that things get better down the line, because they have a lot to maybe learn from the Super Falcons. And don't tell me that there's more physicality in the game, okay? Maybe there is, but the point is, the ladies are making us proud, and we also expect the same from the men. And that just naturally takes us to the next conversation about having a more inclusive society, because it's to our benefit. And we have joining us on the program this morning, Dr. Osasoyi Dirisu, who's Executive Director of a Policy Innovation Center. Dr. Dirisu, good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Kayode, for having me.
It's good to have you. You're doing some work about new voices, new approaches to having an inclusive society, which naturally means that we'll have a more developed society, a more prosperous nation, and the rest. But I want to begin by asking you, for the benefit of a lot of Nigerians who hear Policy Innovation Center and wonder, oh, I like what it sounds like, but what is the Policy Innovation Center? What's the simple answer to that?
Thank you so much. So the Policy Innovation Center, we're the first nationalized behavioral initiative in Africa. And the reason why the center was set up in 2021 was to have a center dedicated to using behavioral science and gender transformative approaches to inform better policy and program design. So in a nutshell, we have two phrases that summarize us: innovating for social disparities, to bridge social disparities. So any social disparity you can think of in critical sectors, that's what we innovate for. But then also innovating to develop policy for humans. So policies that would actually, using policy approaches that help to develop better policies that would work for human beings in real life settings.
Amazing. And this is some of the things we sort of take for granted. We just assume things happen.
Yeah.
We just do things and they happen, but we forget that there should be proper thinking. There's a process to coming up with policies. Did you just think, well, I think this is right, let's make it a policy? There's
Absolutely.
A process. It's a method to the madness, but in this case, there's a method to the sanity. So you just held the Gender and Inclusion Summit 2025, and this is like one of the biggest gatherings in this part of the world on gender and inclusion. I want to tie it to our reality as a society and as a nation. Why is this important? Gender and inclusion issues. Why is it important?
Thank you so much. So at the core of our work at the Policy Innovation Center, innovating to break social disparities, why are we passionate about that? We're passionate about that because we know that a lot of development frameworks sometimes leave out the concept of inclusivity. I don't think it's intentional. I mean, a lot of conversations around investments, aid, development, infrastructure, at the core of those conversations are how do we get return on investments? And so sometimes when business conversations go on about countries, GDP growth and all that, there's some tendency, if it was not intentionally included, to leave out that concept of inclusion. And why is inclusion important? Inclusion is important because if we're not striving for inclusive development, we'll be leaving an entire segment of society behind. And development that is not truly inclusive is also not sustainable. That is why we talk about the Sustainable Development Goals. And within the Sustainable Development Goals, you will see that conversations around gender equity, inclusion of marginal groups, marginalized groups, really is important. So the reason why we do the Gender Summit, the reason why we started the Gender Summit in 2022 was because we knew that if there was no dedicated platform to bringing these conversations together annually, we may actually be leaving that large elephant out of the room.
Fantastic. So you have done this since 2022, you say, and you've time and again brought in leaders, political leaders, government representatives, business representatives, everyday Nigerians, to sit at a table of sorts to speak to these issues and come up with what I call it action plans on what to do to make sure we have a more inclusive society. What has been the success rate? What kind of feedback have you been getting? Such that you say, all of this work we've done, the sleepless nights, the plannings, the conversations, they're actually paying off.
Thank you. So first of all, I need to put a caveat here. Change is not an easy process.
Absolutely.
It is not easy to make impact. It's easier to influence, and that's one of the things the summit does, influences people to begin to think differently about gender and inclusion. But making real impact is hard, but that's what we're committed to doing. So one of the things, the way we've evolved the summit over the last 3 years is, first of all, to see this as a platform that needs to be sustained in perpetuity. So first of all, understanding that advocacy, which is what we do with the platform, for change, for policy change, for impact, must be sustained. So that's the first commitment. And I think that is the first place I would say we have succeeded, at least, in pulling this off for the past 4 years. Yeah. You would see that some of the conversations we had in 2022, we're still having them, because it takes that long sometimes to make that dent that would lead to a change. But we've also seen real progress. In what ways? So first of all, when we started in the very first summit in 2022, I remember that there was a conversation about workplace inclusion for an entire sector in Nigeria. And thankfully, there was a minister and a development partner that committed right there to working together to make a change in that sector. And the next year, they came to the summit to tell us that they had been able to increase participation of women in decision-making spaces in that sector. And they now even had a section president, and that was a woman. The National Women Economic Empowerment Policy has brought that conversation around the domestication and how that economic empowerment policy can improve the outcome for women. And they have consistently come to the summit since 2022. And conversations from the summit has shaped insights that have led to where we are with now. Coming back yesterday, you see that we have worked together with partners and donors to successfully develop roadmaps that are now being launched in different states. But we still haven't stopped. That conversation has still come back to the summit because we're now talking about how to sustain whatever impact is being made at the states. So we take critical insights from the summit. We also see 2 days ago when we're talking about developing community-led solutions for religious for addressing GBV, working with religious and traditional rulers. That conversation has also been ongoing at the summit. And we're now seeing real implementation going on in some states. You saw some traditional rulers come from those states to also reinforce the work that is being done. So over the last few years, policy insights have come. Just yesterday, we had a conversation around from aid to investment, leveraging economic diplomacy to advance inclusive development. And then, one of the high-level panel members committed to working together with the Policy Innovation Center to see how we can come up with a framework to guide conversations around inclusive development, to bring those conversations into trade agreements. So there's a lot that has happened. But beyond that is a lot of people network, make connections, develop new projects. A lot of new projects have been signed off at the Gender Summit. A lot of ideas. Then talk about what we're doing with the research community. People come there, showcase their work, get support, get funding support. And finally, yesterday, we started for the first time an innovation hackathon at the summit. So that means that people who can sit in their homes hoping that their ideas will be heard can pitch to see their innovations showcased at the summit and also get funding to take those ideas forward.
And it was beautiful to see. I mean, I was there and I saw how the conversations were well curated. I mean, you talked about inclusion in the transport sector.
Yes.
You talked about inclusion. If you talk about the fashion industries, where
yes.
religious, traditional institutions, even the innovative part of it. But Jeffrey, my colleague in Lagos, would also like to come in on this. Over to you, Jeffrey.
What is of interest to me especially is, I think, what they categorize as SDG 5, gender equality, 10, reducing inequalities and others. And I looked at the summit tracks where you were highlighting strategies and diverse voices to promote women's leadership across sectors. That is quite important because I was listening to former Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, I think in Kent in the UK, when he was making a presentation, where he alluded to the fact that while it was in pressure group and civil society, there is this much they could do. But being in government, he was able to move significant needle, especially as Attorney General of Lagos State. And one of the challenges we've had is systemic pushback to put women on the table. Senate has 4 women, 1 is suspended. There's an abysmal number represented as well in the House of Representatives. And then there's even worse numbers across the states, depending on the states you're looking at. All of this you're doing can move even 10 times, can 10x with women on the table in political leadership. How do you want to break that ice?
Thank you so much. Conversations around women in leadership, first of all, we all know that it's established that there's a business case for ensuring that we are increasing participation of women in decision-making spaces. That's the only way we can sustain development, advance the SDGs, and also ensure that we are improving GDP growth. I mean, the business case is clear. Over the past 3-4 years, we have brought conversations about women in leadership right at the center of the Gender and Inclusion Summit. Just this past 2 days, we had conversations. We had the Women in Leadership Coalition. They had a session about how to increase representation of women. We're not just looking at, we're very clear that representation is important at the highest level. But we also want to go down and make sure that even in the workplace, in the boardrooms, in cabinets, we have women adequately represented. And that's one thing that, I know that the Women in Leadership Coalition are advocating for. But we also yesterday had conversations, looking at what the potential, for example, for the reserve seat bill, if passed, could do for women in leadership. We also had a very interesting conversation at the summit, and I'm very passionate about this because over the next 5 years, we at the Policy Innovation Center would have that opportunity to take this not just as a conversation, but as a project. So we're working on a project we've titled Women in Economic Leadership in Academic Institutions. In the past 1 year, with the support of one of our donors, we've been looking at 6 universities and trying to understand to what extent that we have representation of women in leadership positions within the economics department. And over the last 1 year, it's interesting to know that we went to some universities, including the one I graduated from, and you have just, out of maybe 20 lecturers and professors, you have just 1 woman. And we had a dialogue where, female students told us that in my school, we don't have any economics lecturer or professor. Why do you want me to graduate and become an economist and become the next Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala? So for the next 5 years, the painstaking process of deepening our work in those universities, looking at what the problems are, and working very closely with the university to create policy and an enabling environment to increase women leadership. But beyond that project, one of the things we're doing, like I mentioned to Kayode, is sustaining advocacy. We will not get tired of speaking about this, we will not get tired of supporting, and also we will not get tired of providing opportunities to increase economic empowerment of women. There is no woman in leadership without a woman who is economically empowered. Those two actually have to go together. And this is a commitment that we have, and that's one of the reasons why the Gender and Inclusion Summit exists.
I can see the bottom up. Perhaps I was talking about top bottom, but it's all part of the conversation. Let's talk about a bit of, well, I call it a lower hanging fruit. I know you also highlighted it in part of your tracker, and that has to do with what you're doing with women, bridging that gap in technology. In fact, a lot of young people are now into trading, whether they are trading futures or all of that. What are you doing in that direction? Because that looks like the easy access. These are spaces where young people have not been rigged out. Creativity, creative sector, and technology. So walk us through what you're doing in that space of technology.
Thank you. So just to mention that the conversations around the women economic empowerment policy is not only about, trade and market women and all that. One big piece of it that has been part of the engagement over the past 1 year is emerging sectors. So the creative sector is one of that, and looking at what the barriers to growth or achieving their full potential in the creative sector looks like. And then also within this space, we've been looking at a lot of conversations around digital inclusion for women. In fact, last year, one of the sub-themes was how do we use digital tools to improve livelihoods for women in rural and hard-to-reach areas, and then also for young people. So digital inclusion is at the core of what we do. We know what the barriers are to advancing digital inclusion, but we are committed to seeing how we can continue to not just reinforce the conversation, look at where the evidence points to. Many people were surprised yesterday that we had a session on fashion at the Gender Summit. Why did we do that? Because the creative sector is one critical area leveraging technology that can see increase in opportunities for women, young people, and marginalized groups, and men, even in the next decade. So we're really passionate about that. We're not just continuing the conversations, we're also supporting the evidence that shows how we can grow this sector.
Well, Dr. Dirisu, there's a lot to uncover about this, but it's great that you have promised to sustain this. So yes, year in, year out, we'll always approach this based on what we have learned. And this women economic empowerment policy, we must mention that there are states, a lot of states that have not implemented it just yet. And that means that they're sort of disenfranchising women in that sense. So this is a call out to states. If you are in a state currently, I don't want to reel out the names, but you should ask if you're in a state and that women economic empowerment policy has not been domesticated or being implemented, then you need to raise some dust, because it means that we're not running on two engines as we ought to. We're just sort of running on one engine. But as we wind down, Dr. Dirisu, I'd like you to speak to those who maybe missed out on it. They still have an opportunity to catch a playback of the Gender and Inclusion Summit today. Maybe speak to that and let us know what the next few months will look like, because this is just one part of the job, really. There's a lot more work to be done before the next one, so we'll just wind down with that.
Thank you. So many ways you can still engage if you miss the summit. First of all, I know we have a playback of some aspects of the summit on live TV, on channels, and on other TV stations. In addition to that, we have all the sessions on YouTube. So a real opportunity to watch, engage, learn, engage on our social media also. And we have a post-summit event in November in Rwanda. So if by any chance any of us happens to be in Rwanda, the date to be announced in a couple of weeks, please also join us in Rwanda to continue the conversations. And finally, as we wind down from the summit, the team is now going to work on what we call the Purple Book. So every conversation that happened in the past 2 days will be synthesized, the recommendations synthesized, critical insights synthesized into the Purple Book, which will make publicly available March every year. So you can take those conversations again, use the insights to inform your work. And finally, over the next few months, we're going to take the insights from the summit and work with all the stakeholders that made promises, made commitments, shared recommendations to see how we can co-create solutions into the future. Because when we come back in 2026, we don't want to report the conversations, we want to report the impact.
Fantastic. So there's a lot to do with this conversation, and the Purple Book is available publicly eventually.
Yes,
or will
it's
be
publicly available.
So they can get it from your website.
Yes, 2022, 23, and 24 are available on our website.
So that's some great body of work for policy development and implementation.
Yes.
We have to thank you so much, Dr. Osasi Idrisi, for the great work you're doing with the Policy Innovation Center and the Gender and Inclusion Summit. So here's to ensuring that we are more inclusive as a people, as a society. After all, it is in our, what's that word now? Self-enlightened interest.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you
Idrisi.
so much.
Well, there you have it. I think this is yet another reminder as to how we can build a better society and do better for ourselves and the coming generation. So to all the states that have implemented the women economic empowerment policy, some who are still dragging their foot, now is the time. Well, this is where we draw the curtains on the show today. Thank you so much for being a part of it. We wish the Super Eagles the very best. No pressure. I'm Kayode Okikule.
There's definitely pressure, Kayode. I'm Jeffrey Uzama, and wish the women the very best. Quota will do a long thing, bring a big deal of positioning for our women, and I agree with her. That's it on the program. Enjoy your weekend. Sunrise Daily is up next at the top of the hour. Bye-bye.